The T-shirt.
Is this his pre-show?
Oh,
Before we get to Dave McPherson?
Maybe, yeah.
All right.
The T-shirt fits this way. It's tight on me this way.
Really?
A little bit.
Wow.
So that was funny. But there's great band, great new wave band.
New wave, not new wave.
Not new wave. Out of Whitby, Ontario. I don't know if you can see the cassette under there.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah. I was a wee bit younger back then.
Just a wee bit younger. Same hair, I would say.
Similar.
You got two eyes now.
That was actually a what do you call it? Like the dot drawing, a stipple. I don't know what's it called.
Oh yeah.
By Mike Kierstead.
Yep, Mike Kierstead. His name is right there.
The Kierstead family.
Yeah.
Family of artists. Mike did that.
So, Gregg, today we have David McPherson on.
We do.
Where's your copy? We're gonna talk about Massey Hall. I mean, it's
copy's
great.
On the Manitoulin.
The publisher sends us this so we can do research.
Yep.
And we can have like a great episode.
Yep.
So I'm looking forward to the nuggets you're going to pull out of this book here.
Perfect.
Yeah. I wanted to talk to you about something else actually before David comes on, and I know we only got about less than 10 minutes. But probably like yourself, I follow a number of musicians on Twitter and on Instagram. And one of the people that I follow is Danko Jones.
Yes.
And so Danko Jones, the band and the person, I'm guessing. Anyways, Danko posted something. He posted on Instagram a tweet of his that caught my attention. And I did some digging and I found out he was upset. He was angry. He was disappointed in the Canadian rock band Monster Truck for teaming up with Southern rocker and MAGA member Kid Rock.
Yes.
On a version of one of Monster Truck's songs.
That's correct.
And I know you've been a fan of Monster Truck. You've seen them live.
Numerous times.
Yeah. And I wanted to get, now, I haven't listened to the song. I haven't necessarily read all of the lyrics to the song. All I'm going on is what made Danko Jones upset at this particular version. And I'm guessing the video as well that came out in support of the song. But I wanted to get your thoughts on this. I
think Strombo put it best not very long ago.
Okay.
When he basically said, and Danko took a screen grab from Insta and shared it on Twitter, and he's Strombo said, "Fuck racism. Go listen to some Danko Jones." And I was actually listening to Danko Jones earlier today because, again, it's part of what's happening right now. And yeah, so I'm blown away. As I posted a day or two ago. I remember Kel and I going to, I think it was Sound Academy. I can't remember whether it was their show. Was it a Casby? Was it a Sausage Fest? I can't remember what the show was.
Yeah.
But they played there. And it's the first time we had seen them. And we met them, whatever, VIP upstairs or whatever it was. And, they're rocking it out and everything. And then like they're afterwards backstage or whatever, or in the VIP, and they're all like nice shirts and the hair's pulled back and, just really nice guys.
Yeah.
And I remember Kel and I were just left struck going, man, these are really nice guys. Like they really are. Like they rock it out, but they're just nice dudes.
Yeah.
So and the song, their song has, again, I'm not a lyrics guy, as anybody will tell you, including my kids and my wife. But their song really had nothing to do with what Kid Rock did with it. It was basically the chorus. And Kid Rock basically said, like, the lyrics are all about, millennials and so mainstream media sucks. And, they're all gangster in their furs and everything else. And that's really what I think Danko was calling out, which is, what are you doing? What are you doing? Mm-hmm. And the funny thing is, I saw a tweet because somebody shared, and I don't remember what the date was, but it was actually a tweet from Monster Truck a while ago. So it's one of those things where there's always a tweet for it. And Monster Truck are like, Canadians need to stop trying to pretend they're Americans in the award shows and this and that and everything else. It's like, whoa, okay. Whoa. So the person pulled it back out from the back pocket and went, there's always a tweet for that.
There's always a tweet for that.
So yeah, it's just, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what to say. I really don't. I'm at a loss for words. And then maybe they've always been maggots as well. Maybe they're, maybe they're well rooted in the Jason Kenney camp. And that's the crowd they're trying to attract. I mean, they've certainly lost a whole bunch of us in this. I mean, I can't imagine collaborating with Kid Rock is going to make you a superstar in the US. I mean, the videos exploded. Yeah. In a couple of days, it's had a massive amount of views. But I don't think it's had views for the right reason. And I was gonna reply to somebody about that. I thought, I'm not gonna all support from the, like retweeting Danko Jones' tweet with Strombo and saying, I'm with Strombo, and I had Danko cranked earlier today. I mean, that's the best way. I think I can do it. I mean, I could go out and fight the trolls. I mean, he's doing an amazing job of it. Mm-hmm. He's doing a phenomenal job on Twitter of just, picking his battles and just absolutely crushing them, in my opinion. Yeah. I'm sure the other side disagrees.
Yeah, it was very interesting. It's sort of, when I think you had brought it to my attention about Eric Clapton, because I've been a big fan of his music. And when you sort of told me some of the stories about him, and then, recently, the Rolling Stone podcast, had an episode about, some of the stuff that he's been up to recently, as in regards to, the vaccine and the stuff that he's done in the past. It just blows me away. I'm like, damn, can I listen to his music in the same way?
There's a lot of really shitty people out there creating some great music. I mean, I look at Michael Jackson, I love his music. I do. Yeah. Like, guys was musically brilliant. Yeah. But personally, I don't know. I don't even know what descriptor I'd use. I know what he's been accused of, but it's like, I don't know.
Yeah, I remember having a conversation years ago with an old friend of mine about how do you separate the art from the artist, and then I also remember my brother, when we were kids, in his room, he had drawn a mural, and in the mural was, there's a kid wearing a shirt, and on the back of the shirt, it'll say stuff like, machine wash warm water, don't dry, don't iron dry or whatever. And then I think the third one was, don't have heroes. And the thinking about that was because him and I were huge Ben Johnson fans. And it just, we just got floored when we, saw and heard the announcement that his gold was being taken away, because of steroid use. Anyways. Yeah, it's enjoy the music. Yeah, fuck racism. Go listen to Danko Jones.
Hi, the following podcast is brought to you by Radical Road Brewery, the best craft beer in the heart of Leslieville. find him at 1177 Queen Street East. That's Radical Road Brewery.
David, I have a bone to pick with you.
Okay.
When you did the Indigo event,
Right.
which was really good, by the way, great online event, you were wearing like a jacket and tie, I think.
I wasn't wearing a tie, but I did have
a jacket. You're dressed down for us today.
No, I do have a shirt with cufflinks. I was at a funeral. Right. I was at a quick visitation earlier, so I was gonna put a t-shirt on, but then I'm like, I can't be bothered to change again. Yeah.
Well, you're looking good. Congrats.
Yeah.
On the book. This is a book you read through. It's a book you pick up to read a chapter. It's a book you can just, look at the photos. I mean, I've never seen Jim Cuddy look so young.
Yeah.
And just, read some of the stuff. It is a great, a really great book for music fans, for, historians of Toronto. Just a great piece. How did this specific book get started for you?
Well, I guess it was, I was working, had finished up the last book on the Horseshoe Tavern and was thinking about what's next. And I've always loved Massey Hall. It's such a special place. I knew it was coming on, 125 years. And I never thought that I could be the one to write that story. But I guess I remember they were having some tours and things, as before kind of their big anniversary. And Dean Cameron was there. And I remember Rob Bowman gave like a presentation. I went down to it with my dad, and it was one of those that started to, I put a bug in Dean's ear that day, I guess. I met him and said, I've been, if anyone thought about writing a book, or I'd be interested, of writing a book. And, I guess it just kind of went from there. I pitched it to my publisher, and, they were on it right away. And then same as the Horseshoe book, I wanted to make sure that the venue that I was writing about was on board. It could be, considered the authentic or the official book. And then I would get access that I needed. And so that was the next step. My publisher and I met with Dean Cameron and with Mima at the hall, and Jesse, who's now the current president, and basically explained what our thoughts were about putting this book out. And I think similar to when I met with the Horseshoe guys back in 2015, before I put that book together, they saw a fellow music lover in me. They saw someone who was going to tell the story in a way that it needed to be told, if you will, not to dig in, find all the dirt and that kind of thing, right? It was about honoring the legacy of the place and more an ode, if you will, to a historical landmark and a cultural institution to not just Toronto, but to the country.
It's a fantastic read. And I mean, I love the fact that, but you went into sort of the early time and the fact that it was to be a hall for everyone. Mm-hmm. I thought that was fascinating.
Well, and that's kind of the, if you take the academic stance, it was kind of the thesis that I went into writing this book with. It was, Hart Massey, he gave this hall. It was partly a memorial to his oldest son, Charles, who passed away at a young age of 36 from typhoid fever. But really, he wanted it to be a place for the people, as you said. And 127 years on, I think you can honestly say that it has maintained that role. Yeah. And despite, some acts and playing that place that I'm sure Hart Massey would never have imagined, like the Iron Maidens and AC/DC and some of the right, and comedians and different wrestling and boxing or whatever other events that were held there. It has, just that fact too, like I referenced about all the different types of events, it's been a place for the people, right? And I think that's the cool thing and what I've really enjoyed with this book so far, people who have reached out, whether it's, friends of my mom's or people online or whoever it is that they have a Massey Hall story, and it all relates to probably when their particular era, their time when they lived in Toronto or when they first went to that hall. And for some, it was seeing the Toronto Symphony on a Sunday afternoon when, Ernest Macmillan gave free concerts. For others like us, maybe it's, seeing a rock show in, the 90s or 2000s or, seeing Gordon Lightfoot. So I think that's the really neat thing about Massey is that it has such broad appeal, and it really is. Like you said, I think it's still a place for the people that anyone can go in there, right? You don't have to dress up. You can dress up or dress down, and you feel as comfortable there as you would going into any other venue.
Yeah.
For sure.
When did Massey Hall be that place that you knew that was a special place? And I tell you why I'm asking, because I don't know if it was always that for me, because it was sort of like, Massey Hall is just, a small sort of concert venue. This is, my thinking. But, living outside of New York, living in Toronto and looking down at the States, I would know that Carnegie Hall, I knew there was something special about that place just because you would hear the name a lot. The Apollo in Harlem, you knew that people on the radio came from these places along their journey. Massey Hall sort of never was that for me until recently, I would say. I don't want to ask you why you think that. This is you're not my therapist.
Because you're not cultured.
Because I'm not cultured. That would be one.
Maybe.
But David, when was it for you? When did you know Massey Hall was special?
Well, I mean, it is a good question and observation, because now that I reflect on it, I think that it's like a lot of things, right? It's almost like we have to be validated as Canadians. Look at our artists, right, who have gone down to the US to get success. That old story before, we hold them up as, our great Canadian musicians or artists, right? So maybe there's a bit of that with Massey Hall, although, in certain circles and people, as I said, whether you grew up in Toronto, you went to the symphony or you went to concerts there, it's been there, I think, but maybe it is a bit of that beyond Toronto and Canada, unless you were an artist who played there, because that's where I see these artists all knew how special it was.
Yeah.
And whether they were American or international, I talked to Nana Muscuri, who, started playing there back in the 60s, and she just adored the place. George Thorogood,
Wow.
He went up and he wanted to kiss the brick as he was leaving the one night, saying, "Don't you ever tear this place down." So it's not just Canadians, right? And I guess in a roundabout way, you asked me when I knew it was special. Probably, one of the first times I went in there, just in the sense of you feel that weight of history, right? I think to use that cliche if these walls could talk. And you do. I really feel because of the building, and once you know all the people who have played there before, and you feel that in the room, right? It's kind of palpable, and to me, that's what makes it so special. And the acoustics, of course, is the other thing that all artists talk about, and most people who have seen a show there, you have to agree it's one of the better sounding rooms.
Yeah. Gregg, I know you want to ask a question, but I want to ask you, like, when did you know, when was Massey Hall a place for you? Like, when did you know that was a special place for musicians?
A couple of shows for me that just stood out. I saw Depeche Mode, being probably 82, 83, something like that. Saw In Excess on their Kick tour, like the early Kick. We took my little brother. He would have been like, I don't know how old at the time, 12 or whatever it was, for his birthday. And Jeff and I and Warren, we had front row seats for that show. So it was just like, so again, goosebumps. So to me, it's a lot to do with the experiences. Like I've been going to Massey Hall for a long time. So it was that. And actually, I know the question I was going to ask, and that's question I was going to bring up as well. And I didn't go to these shows, but I thought it was incredible. Because I was into the In Excess, that kind of Depeche Mode sound. And I don't know why I was listening to Q107. Nothing against Q107. I just, I was listening to CFNY back then. And I was listening to Q107, and I think it might have been Derringer, if I'm not mistaken. And he gave a shout out. He said, "We don't play this band on Q," which is funny because they did later. But he said, "I want to give props to Simple Minds because they've sold 4 nights out back in '84. So it was like, there's Q107 giving props to a band that they're not playing at the time. The Edge or CFNY or whatever, Spirit Radio at the time would have been playing them, obviously. And it was just like, there's 4 nights in the other station. So, I mean, for me, it's just like all that. And again, that's the music I was listening to at the time, but it's like all that for me is what made it special. And then that continued on, through my later.
Yeah. And I mean, like you said, I mean, it's incredible. Like once you start going back into the history and seeing the list of artists who have been on that stage, I think that helps to solidify in your mind too, how special it is, because, even if it took a while to understand that or realize it from your personal experiences, I think once you see that, okay, name a genre, all the greats in that genre have probably performed in that hall, right? From, jazz and Miles Davis, and you got blues with B.B. King and Buddy Guy. And like you mentioned, you have in the 80s, you had a lot of these new wave bands and artists. And then
that went on to be huge,
right? And then all the big folk artists in the 60s and the 70s and singer-songwriters. I mean, it's truly incredible. And then all the world artists as well, right? You had all those other, Spanish guitarists like Segovia and people like that would constantly return and play Massey year after year. So,
yeah, I couldn't imagine watching you two in that space. Was it the Unforgettable Fire?
Yeah,
it was that one, eh? Wow.
Yeah, I think it's a similar story from my understanding to my last book with the Garys booking the Police at
that's right,
at the Horseshoe. I mean, just on a bit bigger scale, that U2 was kind of on the cusp of that next level of stardom. And I think it was Derringer too, who I chatted with for the book, that referenced going to that show and how incredible it was that sitting in that audience, you could just feel here was a band that was ready to, like, I would never see them again in such a small venue, right? Or as a venue of this size. Because the next time they come around, they're going to be filling the hockey arenas and bigger stadiums. So,
yeah, I felt the same way about that seeing In Excess and the Kick tour, and I've been told, and I don't know why I don't remember this, because Jeff's usually the one that forgets things and I'm usually the one that remembers them. But apparently we were all up on stage dancing with them and just having a great time.
Wow.
So to that same sort of thing, right? It's a venue where a lot of bands played it when they were sort of, they weren't the Masonic Temple, but they weren't the stadium yet. So then you went through Massey Hall before you never saw them again in a small venue or smaller venue.
For sure. And then the other thing that Jesse talked to me about that I think he really captured it well, right? It's this, especially for Canadian artists, it's this aspirational venue that artists on the way up, it's like the pinnacle and the dream of one day, that's, I feel I've made it if I play Massey, and that's, where I'm setting the bar.
Yeah.
But the same token, you get people like our favorite old man Neil, who, he could easily fill Scotiabank or fill all these other places, but usually he would prefer to come and play, 3 nights at Massey Hall kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of artists like that they'll play several nights versus, one night at a bigger stadium, just because how special Massey is, and it is more intimate. And, as an artist, I think that's why it means so much more when you can be that close to the people. Like you said, where else could you definitely couldn't go to, Rogers Center or Scotiabank and suddenly you're up on stage dancing with the band. I mean, that would never happen. Right?
Yeah. Well, David, let's change this from a Massey Hall to a Neil Young at Massey Hall. You've seen him probably as many times as Neil has albums out.
Well, not quite.
But do you remember the first time you saw him at Massey Hall?
Yeah, it would have been back in like 2007, I guess. Yeah. Which
tour? Which concert was that?
That was the Chrome Dream 2 tour.
Wow.
Where what I loved about that was that he played 3 nights. I went to 2 of the 3 shows. I think I went on my own. Well, the one night I went with my dad, but we had only been able to snag single tickets. So, I mean, we switched it up where one of us sat up in the balcony and one in the orchestra for each half. And then the other night I ended up, Neil's fans, as you might know, are called Rusties. And at the time I was really into, collecting all these bootleg tapes and things on these Rusty groups. And I found out a bunch of them were meeting for dinner beforehand. So I was going to the show on my own. So I met up with them. And long story short, I mean, my ticket for the second show was front row, but like apparently it was one of those obstructed view because I guess I was at the end of the row. And there was one of those pillars there. It wasn't that bad, really. But in the first half of the show, this guy I'd met from Newfoundland, the person sitting next to him, who he didn't know, got the boot. And so for the second half of the show, I was like dead center, like front row. So that for the electric portion of the show. So that was pretty incredible.
Nice. What's your favorite Neil Young show at Massey Hall?
Well, that would be it because you can't top that. I mean, it was one of those where I love all facets of Neil. He is a real musical chameleon. You never know what you're going to get, but
true.
That was one of those nights where he did half acoustic, half electric. So in Massey Hall, I mean, both work with him, but it was wonderful to just see him at the start, and he was very talkative. With the crowd, which sometimes he's not too. He's so ornery that way. You don't know if he's going to just, sing and not really tell stories. But that night he kind of, I think, was a little nostalgic. And I mean, even in his song list, he played, a few songs like Ambulance Blues and songs that he doesn't typically play in concert.
Yeah.
And then the second half, he had a great band, Ben Keith, and I'm trying to remember, Rick Rosas was with them. So it wasn't Crazy Horse, but it was another group of longtime players that had been with them. And they just rocked out, and it was a fantastic night. So
nice. Imagine if Bob Dylan could have captured some of that magic when he came through. That's when he went electric, right? He played
that was another seminal moment in Massey Hall history. I mean, he was there in 1965, and it was when the guys from the band were backing him up. They were still known as the Hawks at the time. Mm-hmm. And as Robbie Robertson recalls, it was a real shock for them because they were so used to the Yonge Street scene and playing the Cock Door and Friar's Tavern and places like that. And everyone loved them, and it didn't matter if they cranked up the music. It was more a rock and roll scene, right? They weren't as familiar with the whole Yorkville scene and the folk scene where Dylan came from. And that's what happened at that show, right? The rest of the tour, they'd been booed once Dylan went electric because all the folkies, right? That's all they wanted. They're like, yeah, Judas, you've betrayed us. I mean,
crazy.
But it happened in their hometown, right? And it was a real shock, I guess, for Robbie and the rest of the band that even in Toronto, it didn't matter. He had divided his audience that much. I think some people even walked out, right, once he started to play electric. But, several years later, they returned as the band, and it was a much better homecoming for them, that's for sure.
Yeah. Absolutely. There's a whole chapter you have on Gordon Lightfoot. I remember, him being one of, I said, I need to see Gordon sooner rather than later. And he would always play November. I don't know. Is there a story around why November at Massey Hall? Do you know?
No, that's a good question, because I know it wasn't always November, but at some point in time, my guess is it probably was the end of his tour. Possibly, sure. Right? A good time of year. He lived in Toronto, so maybe it just made sense. November, let's do kind of that residency at that time every year. But I know other times it was in March or other times of the year, but yeah, it was a natural that Gord got his own chapter.
Of course. I mean, he's opening the hall this week on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 3 nights. And, at 83 years old, I mean, he's not the Gord that we once knew with his voice and everything else, but he's still a legend in Canada, and it's his hall. He's played there more than anyone else. So it's fitting that he should open up this revitalized hall, and he's got such an incredible history there. I'm sure so many people have seen him play right every decade since the 60s, right? And haven't missed a show. I mean, it like you said, because he came back year after year, it was almost like people would mark that on their calendar, and it was kind of a annual thing that they did. So yeah, and the one year I was able to see him, Massey Hall closed, and I had to go see him in Ottawa. So I had to make the drive out to Ottawa to see that. But he still fills in. He still fills that whole room. Yeah. Even this old. He's able to bring. Not just the people that grew up with him when he was like a superstar, but you're getting people like myself who, found his albums in maybe dad's collection, or, maybe heard, his music on an oldie station once and just loved the voice and the storytelling in his songs is second to none. Mm-hmm. But if anyone is a fan of the Hall of Canadian Music, he's sort of like a must see for everybody, for anybody really.
Definitely, yeah.
Sorry, Gregg.
So no, I was going to say. So to that point, though, in terms of you wanting to see him and not being able to see him at Massey Hall, I wanted to ask actually both of you. What I'll preface this with. For me, the answer is that last Spirit of the West show. So, what shows didn't you get to see at Massey Hall that you would love to see? Because that Spirit of the West show, I'm kicking myself. I'm totally, before John Mann, the sort of the last hurrah, if you will. I'd be keen to know what your.
David, why don't you go first?
Yeah, I can go first. I mean, it's a great question. If you're talking about shows just in the history of the hall, there's quite a few. I could say.
I guess ones we've been alive for and able to go to.
Because definitely the one for me, I was alive, but I would have only been about 3 years old. Seeing Bob Marley there, because he's the guy that I would have loved to see Bob Marley anywhere, but I just can imagine seeing him in that hall. I guess at the time too, like reggae wasn't as well known, but and it brought out the whole Jamaican community apparently in town, and that would have been a special, incredible evening. But I probably with you. Spirit of the West for sure, because I've talked to some of the other members of the band, and I've seen footage of that, and just how special that must have been for. Not only was it their first time ever playing the hall, but then they had a singer who they didn't know if he was going to get through it. He's in the late stages of Alzheimer's, and you just bring that all together, and apparently he really pulled it off. And the audience was just so behind him, and I think that's what makes it so special too. Is like you said, that those type of moments can happen at Massey Hall because of the connection between artist and audience is so strong, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I highly recommend that, for anybody listening, go find the footage on YouTube, because it's out there that you can watch. I don't know how much of the show, but some of the show is all out there. So,
Yeah, well, and for those who don't know, I mean, that's part of Massey Hall's mandate is helping artists develop, and one of the ways they do that is a lot of their shows over the last 5+ years they've recorded, and so you can go to their website and find a lot of these. There's this Live at Massey Hall series where you can see a lot of these rising stars and bands like Cour de Pirate and Kathleen Edwards and. Who else? Matt Mays, I think, but a lot of those they've recorded those shows. So
nice, yeah. Matt Mays would be great there. For me, there's two shows. There's one show that I don't think ever happened, but I don't know, maybe between 5 and 10 years ago, there was rumors that Prince was going to do a show,
right? Yeah,
at Massey Hall, and I remember. I don't know, I guess leaving work at lunch and there was like a lineup to maybe buy these tickets of a show that maybe would happen. Do you remember that, David? Did that show ever happen?
It didn't happen. No, not that day. Not that day, that's for sure. But I remember seeing photos of that and hearing about it and seeing it. And that would have been incredible. I mean, to see him in that venue for sure. Oh,
it would be phenomenal. But for me, it was, I think Neil was supporting Lanois. And he did a show there that was recorded and made into a movie. But yeah, it was deciding, he's going to play his newer stuff. And I really love his old stuff. And then I got the album and I go, grew on me. And, since that day I said, okay, forget it. Never again. If Neil's going to come into town, I'm going to go see him. And then he plays that big festival. I can't remember. Way Home, was it?
Yeah.
He played with Willie Nelson's boys. Yeah. Promise of the Real. And I decided, I don't want to go see him. And then I hear that he just put on an amazing show. And so it always kicks me in the butt when I decide not to go to a Neil show that he just puts on a show to remember.
Yeah,
so that's Greg. That's my show for me.
I missed most of that because my daughter started calling me and my earphones went over to my FaceTime, and I'm like scrambling to turn the audio back on.
Did these guys, Greg? Do you know if these guys played?
They did not play.
Massey.
They did not play Massey Hall.
Massey Hall. Yeah. I don't know, David, if you recognize that face there.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, we did not. We did not play Massey Hall.
No.
Okay. Next time, on your next go around,
on the reunion tour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that this short bit was in the book. I'm a big fan of comedy, and I've heard Jim Carrey tell the story numerous times about the relationship between Rodney Dangerfield and his dad. And I was like, how does that happen? And so, he tells the story about, he opened up for Rodney Dangerfield one time and he brought his dad to the show and his dad got to meet Rodney. And then from then on, Rodney would always ask Jim Carrey about his dad. And as I'm going through the book, you've got this piece on Rodney Dangerfield. And I think there's a copy of the poster in the book. And a young Jim Carrey opened for him, and it's sort of, this is the place that story comes from. So thank you for including that. But like you said, there were so many different events that happened there. Jazz, politics, boxing, wrestling.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, it's one thing you're going to notice when you go and see the hall, or if you have walked by there, you can actually see the original sign and the original name, which was Massey Music Hall.
Yes.
That's engraved in the stone there. But, the reality is that over the years, it's been host to so much more than music, right? Authors have spoke there. Helen Keller spoke there. I mean,
wow.
And lots of politicians, that's where they wrapped up their political campaigns. Union groups had big meetings there, and on and on. I mean, and that's where, again, it goes back to your comment right off the top, Greg, about a place for the people, right? It's so more than it was a place for the people in that sense too. Of it was always open to all these community groups to gather. You know, whether it was the Salvation Army or the suffragette group, or you know, early days people that were trying to were all about prohibition and, you know, not wanting alcohol to, you know, get distributed, all that kind of stuff. It all happened in there, right? I mean,
can you imagine now?
Yeah. Well, yeah, when alcohol sales is such a big important part of the industry right now. But.
Well, the amazing thing is that they didn't have a bar in there until their centennial in 1994.
Wow, that long.
Yeah, that's why it's called Centuries Bar in the basement, because it was put in 1994 when it was the centennial of the hall. Yeah.
That's fascinating. I did not know that. So you mentioned about, you know, what it looks like now. I assume you've had a chance to go in and tour around and stuff. Like, can you talk about not just the grand room, but all the other music supporting facilities that they put into there?
Yeah, well, I think that's part of the grand room itself, the original hall. What people notice the most, I think, are the ceiling, the plaster ceiling that's all been refurbished. For the longest time, it was covered up in wire mesh, and it wasn't safe, but they got plaster restorers came in and meticulously worked on that over many months. New seating, obviously. And then the stained glass windows, to me, that's the thing that's going to be so striking and so special to see, that these were in the original hall, but were boarded up about, 10, 15 years after it opened because of horse traffic and sunlight, that it wasn't great for the concerts that they were putting on. Right. So, but they've totally refurbished all those stained glass windows, put them back in place, and they're all, the type of glass used is they have even blinders that they can put down so the sunlight doesn't come in at certain times of day. And
I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to ask how that was going to be handled. But thank you.
Yeah. And then beyond that, really it was about, as you know, it needed to be modernized in some ways in terms of accessibility and more washrooms and that kind of thing. So, and as much as I know artists who have played there, like Tom Wilson, talks about the dressing rooms, how much he loved the old dressing rooms. You could get lost in there, and you could just sit there and think, oh, wow, I'm sitting in a dressing room where, Charlie Parker once, sat, or Miles Davis or whatever. But reality is, I think most people want things a little more modern, more space. And to that point, too, it's all about the load in and load out. So it's about logistics, too. For those who don't know, they always had to go in the front door of Massey Hall, the same doors that the patrons go in and out of. So now at least they've got this new building in behind and a loading area off the side street there, which will make it a little easier. They got new dressing rooms in the basement level. And then in the new building, they have a recording studio. So for artists to go, rising artists, great way to develop. They have another smaller stage, I think, for about 100, a little more intimate theater. So again, some of the artists they're working with that might eventually play the main stage, but they're able to present some shows in there too.
That's interesting.
So yeah, it's going to be something. I can't wait to get in there. To be honest, I haven't even seen all that yet. I've only read about it because with COVID and the pandemic, I've barely been back down to Toronto. So I'm looking forward to seeing all the enhancements in person very soon. So,
and the bar, I think, has a stage as well, right? Like I think they're going to put a stage down there as well.
Yeah, in the refurbished Centuries Bar, there's going to be a stage there as well. That same thing. They can have smaller, more intimate little performances, maybe media showcases or things like that, I guess, too, right?
Yeah. Or an after show for guests. That'd be
that too is.
Can you imagine that? That'd be awesome. So I was unaware, because I remember asking in the chat when you had the book launch with Indigo, asking about support. And I was more, talking about, because concert tickets these days, can be something I found I don't think do I have it here. I found a give me a quick second. Yeah, here it is. A ticket stub.
Yeah.
From 1996. Oasis opening for Neil Young with Crazy Horse.
Yeah.
Molson Park.
Yeah, I was at that show. Yeah.
$42.50.
Yeah.
$42.50. And I'm thinking I don't recall. I mean, yeah, you can still get a decent price ticket. But yeah, it so I was sort of asking the question in terms of, how do, if it's supposed to be a place for everyone, for the masses, how do you get people that are, young who don't have an income necessarily, to go into a show and appreciate music, appreciate the space, and maybe spark something in them, whether they become a musician or whether they become, like yourself, somebody who documents, the history of music, and music venues. But it was really interesting to learn about some of the stuff that they've been doing around, bringing music to other areas of the city and really helping artists develop. We had Shad on last week, and he's someone that talks about, what Massey Hall did for him as an artist.
For sure.
Yeah.
And that as you reference near the end of the book, I talk about that. And I think it's an important piece that a lot of people don't realize. You buy a ticket and go to a show. For most people, that's where Massey Hall starts and ends. But for those who don't realize that Massey Hall, Roy Thompson Hall, is a corporation. It's a not-for-profit, and part of their mandate, which has just grown more and more in the last 5-10 years and will continue with this recent revitalization, is about artist development and working with artists, following them along in their careers, and people like you mentioned, like Shad, White Horse, all these other bands that they would meet with them and come up with like a 5-year strategy as an example and say, okay, in 5 years, you're going to play Massey. Here's how we're going to get there. You're going to start out, we'll have a thing at the Rivoli and we'll start building up your audience there. And then maybe we'll move on to the Glenn Gould. And then after that, the Winter Garden Theater. And, eventually you'll get to the point where you can fill Massey Hall. And, they're doing that with more and more artists.
That's amazing.
It is amazing. And then beyond that, they have the whole education and outreach piece where they'll work with artists like Royal Wood or Shakura Sayeda and lots of others that they will actually go into a local school in the Toronto area and teach them about songwriting, as an example. Or like, I remember it was really cool. I think it was Shakura that I talked to, who did a thing on protest songs.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And her mom was actually around during, the protests in the 60s and 70s and everything. And so she brought her in as like a guest to actually talk about that experience. And so, imagine like being a student and getting that opportunity to, and those are the type of things that Massey Hall is doing behind the scenes that you don't realize beyond just putting on great concerts in that venue.
Absolutely.
So sort of along that same lines, what was the biggest surprise or the most amazing thing you learned while doing the research to pull the book together?
Well, that was probably one of them, because I knew that they were involved a little bit. I'd heard a bit about this program, but I didn't know the extent of it. And then beyond that, I think I touched on it. It was really just as you dug deeper into the history and you learned about everything that happened there, because same thing, I was more of the view and I just knew Massey as a music hall, right? In a place that I'd seen all these incredible concerts. But then when you go back and see, here's a place where Winston Churchill once stood and gave a speech, and, a place where, boxing matches happen. Like, it was like, what? Typewriting contests. Like, there's just all these different events like that happen there. And that's what I think really was fascinating to see, that over the years, and every single genre of music, that's what I think is really fascinating too. again, that maybe we only know it because of the type of shows we go to, but when you go back and see, you got opera, you have, world music, you have jazz, you have blues, you have folk, you have rock, you have, rap, R&B, like it just pretty much everything has gone through. And that's where I think it really differs too from a Carnegie Hall, even though they get compared a lot because they were built, about 3 years apart. Both were gifts to the city by a philanthropist and industrialist. But Carnegie has that feeling. It's a little more upper class, upper crust, if you will. And I don't think it has had the breadth of and the variety of type of events that Massey has over the years, right?
Possibly, yeah, you're right there. There are many interesting and fascinating stories that come out of your book, David. You've talked about a bunch of them. Right off the top, I go forward by Jan Arden. I was thinking that's an interesting choice, and it was like a question. I got to ask David this question, but as I'm going through the book, okay, she's played here more than any other female artist except one.
Yeah,
makes sense. I'm sure that's not the only reason you chose her, but how did she come about to write the foreword for this book?
It was one of those things where, my last book, I had Jim Cuddy, and I wasn't going to get him to write it again. Even though Blue Rodeo, it could have been a natural because this venue as well, they played there more than any other group. But I really felt Jan is someone I admire, I respect. And once I learned she had played there as much as, or more than any other female artist, as you referenced, surprisingly, only Nana Muscuri, not a Canadian, has played there more because she started back in the 60s. Playing there the first time when she opened up for Harry Belafonte, and then she would come back every year, right? But Jan just seemed like a great fit, and I knew she loves Massey and adores playing there and loves Toronto. And I reached out to her management, and right away they pretty much agreed, and Massey agreed it was the right choice. So it was as simple as that, I guess. So I felt honored and grateful that she chose to write the foreword. And I think she did a great job. It really kind of sets the scene with her sharing a few of her stories, and it's a good start. So
nice.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it shows in the book. I assume you didn't have a hard time getting musicians to come forward and share their stories. It was just like story after story after story.
Yeah, definitely. It was more, I think, one of those, like, some people have asked me about stories you left out or omitted or what was left on the cutting room floor. And that is really the challenge with something like this is you're right. The stories are endless. And that's where it helped having great editors at Dundurn and design team and everything else. That some of the stories are things that I was like, I don't know how I could fit that in, or I don't want to cut it. As you mentioned off the start with the book and how very photographic heavy, and it's the type of book you can flip through. That's where it helped with some of these standalone stories. We were able to put them in that way where just let them tell the story, put their quotes in with a nice photo or that kind of thing as a sidebar. So that worked out really well. But in terms of the artists, no, I was very fortunate. All the managers and people that I made requests to, all very helpful, and everyone was willing to chat. That wasn't and pretty much my wish list, I think, beyond Neil, and he doesn't really talk to a lot of people anyway, but, really, I think for my wish list, when I started out the book and kind of jotted down, okay, here's all the people I'd love to talk to. I'm pretty sure most of them I included in the book in the end and manuscript. So I was pretty lucky that way, but I was fortunate too. Dean Cameron, who unfortunately passed away a few years ago, the former president. He was fantastic in helping me set up interviews with people that he had connections with through his years at EMI. and making those introductions where I didn't already have a connection, or maybe people wouldn't be as apt to grant me an interview, but having him make that introduction made it that much better. And same with the Massey Hall folks, Jesse and Mima and Steven and everyone there just were fantastic. And I can't say enough because they supported this project really throughout. And there was a lot of back and forth with them, but they were helpful throughout trying to set up interviews where I ran into stumbling blocks and that kind of thing. So
that's great. That's great.
David, as we get close to wrapping this up, what's the first show you're going to see at the new Massey Hall? Do you have your ticket yet?
Yeah, I do. It's Gordon Lightfoot this week. So
all right.
I will be going actually with my son on Friday night. So just in 3 days. So it's going to be special. I know that it's one of those, I don't know how I'm going to feel or react, but I know just walking through those 3 red doors again is going to be probably give me chills, and just seeing the people, and you'll feel that collective feeling that everyone has of being back in that building again. And then once Gord takes the stage, I imagine, it's going to be a standing ovation for him for quite a while. And that will be probably pretty emotional too. So I can't wait.
That is awesome. And is that the first show on Friday?
The first show's Thursday, but he's doing 3 nights. So
yeah. What I think that's the guy to see. That as it opens up, there's no better musician, that's for sure. That is awesome. What's the next concert venue you're going to write about?
Yeah,
yeah, that's what everyone asks. I don't know. I mean, I've unplanned. I've kind of become.
Greg, are you with me?
I am.
What's next? And I kind of want to enjoy this for a little bit first. I've debated. I've debated trying to dabble into fiction, possibly.
All right.
So we'll see. We'll see what the muse when I get inspired, and maybe ask me again in a few months. But
I was kind of hoping it'd be like the Hotel Isabella. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
There's certainly enough of them out there. That's the thing. It's whether some of them warrant a whole book or not is a different story. Sure. But I mean, I'm also I'd be interested more to tackle a broader topic possibly too, where it's putting those venues in the context of the culture, and maybe looking at some other facet of a certain period in time in history or that kind of thing.
Yeah,
but we'll see.
That's for sure. There's a lot of talk that has happened this year on music 30 years ago with the number of just massive albums that were released in 91.
That's true, because I'm actually I just chatted with Ron Hawkins yesterday about Shakespeare My Butt at 30, and then before that I did a feature about I talked with the guys from the Hip a few weeks ago and wrote a feature up on Road Apple. So I hadn't thought about that, but 91 for Canadian releases and bands, or it was quite a year.
Yeah, maybe that's the next book for you, David.
Yeah.
Yeah,
1991. You
can thank Greg and I in the
exactly
at the beginning.
You'll be dedication. In the dedication for sure.
Yeah. David, it is always a blast to speak with you. Thank you so much for your time. Congrats on the book as well. Massey Hall, a perfect gift, especially at this time, published by Dundurn Press. You can buy it everywhere books are sold, and if you happen to live in an area that has a local bookstore, go pick it up from there. Go support some local bookstore for sure. David, you're off to a concert. Who are you going to go see just now?
No, I think I'm going to take a pass tonight. I was debating going to see Dan Magnan at center of the square, but I'm going to see Whitehorse and Buffy St. Marie there tomorrow night, and then seeing Lightfoot twice in the later in the week. So I thought, well, 3 shows in 1 week might be might be enough. But when you haven't seen anything for 22 months, I mean, I went and saw Julian Taylor last week and Friends. That was my first indoor show last Thursday, and it just was unbelievable.
Nice.
For those who know what live music is like and who understand it, there's no feeling like it, to be in that room and feel that love and that communal spirit that between the artist and an audience that was lacking for so long. So
yeah,
I'm trying to get caught up on all the shows that I wasn't able to see for a year and a half. So, well,
David, enjoy the music, enjoy the shows, and we'll look forward to chatting with you again sometime soon.
Sounds great. Well, always a pleasure chatting with you guys.
All right. Take care.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Thanks, David. Cheers.
Cheers. Bye.